I would like to talk a little bit about my background, why I think, having been in the army myself, why I think ex-military do actually make good business leaders, not just managers. And then I also think that it's worth explaining why I think that Time Reboot VCT will become the go-to investor of choice for ex-military, and the reasons behind that. I didn't ever take investment in my business, mainly because I never trusted the finance men, because I thought they'll be after their interest rather than mine as an entrepreneur or as an entrepreneur. And I think that as a difference, a main point of difference, being an ex-military for ex-military investment house. So I'm going to start off with a little bit about my background. I left school, took a gap year, joined the army for a bit of that, really disliked it, didn't want to not finish it, and thought, well, that'd be it. A very surprising helicopter pilot who was enormously tall, and I couldn't understand how he fitted into a helicopter, persuaded me to give it another go, and I went to Sandhurst for 2 weeks before going to university, and never said no. Found that I'd signed up to 4 years at university whilst in the army, plus 5 years after that. Ended up doing 6 years, or nearly 7, and loved it. I was a tank commander, and I really enjoyed doing something which I felt, in my mind, was fundamentally worthwhile, was incredibly varied, working with people who I really liked and trusted and respected, who I knew would look after me as much as I tried to look after them. And I felt that it was fundamentally worthwhile. So those three pieces of enjoyment, fundamentally worthwhile, and working with people who I got on with were key. However, I had never really meant to join the army. I knew that I wanted to bring up a family with a degree of normality, and military life is not best suited to being there for breakfast and tea time with your young kids. So I eventually left. Having thought I'd been a reasonably good soldier, I thought, well, I've got half a chance to be perfectly all right in the civilian world. But I knew nothing about civilian life. I had not worked with anybody other than policemen and soldiers. So I thought, how do I get a broad business education? I bought a book called The Best 100 Companies to Work For, realized that Microsoft would not be for me, and applied for the other two, which was Coca-Cola and GE. Slightly embarrassingly, I failed to turn up for an interview with GE. They wrote me a nice letter saying one of the things they look for is proven organization ability. Got a job with Coca-Cola, which I really enjoyed because they allowed me to wear my army boots, and I was given a jacket saying always refreshing, which amused people who came to dinner. And after about 1.5 years of running a team of people with that, and I thought that was great actually, it was a bit like being a troop leader again, I then reapplied to GE. They pretended to forget about my administrative error, and I did 2 or 3 jobs for them, and I learned a lot, actually. I think I learned a lot how not to run a business. It seemed to me in GE that the deal was you do 55% of your time doing something, 45% of your time telling everybody else how well you're doing, because you have to manage your own PR, and I just didn't really get that. The other thing was that whilst Fizzy Pop and GE leasing businesses are all very interesting and worthwhile, they weren't enough for me. Just making $1 was not all I wanted to be about. I wanted to do something which I felt was fundamentally worthwhile and was making a difference. So for me, I decided I needed to go take my own destiny into my own path, and I wanted to set up a business where I could run it the way I wanted to run it, using my own gut instinct, and I think actually the values that the army had invested into me and I had made my own. So I sold my wife's flat. My parents-in-law, after 6 months, started talking to me again, but I pretty much chucked everything in. I thought, you know, there are no guarantees, there is no safety net. I want to burn my bridges so that I have to keep going forward. I cannot go back. And the army does say something about, you know, fortune favors the bold. And I thought, I'm all in, and I will have to make this work. And I was the only one that shared that belief. And my brother, who was a health and safety barrister, said, "You loser, just because you can't hack corporate life, you know, you're going to go and have this nice sort of slightly quirky life in the forest, but nothing's ever going to come from it." So anyway, I set out on the 26th of March 2002, having built and navied for the first course, having thought all the things I couldn't possibly do on my own, but I couldn't employ somebody else to do until there was a real business. I set out and did it, and then I realized, well, I'd done it, so why did I need other people? But finance was something which I was always short of. But for the reasons I said at the top of this, I was very distrustful of taking money from outsiders, partly because I felt if I lost it, I'd have to pay it back. And if I didn't lose it, they'd want half my business when it wasn't worth very much. So I thought I'm going to struggle and save to try and do it on my own. And much to my relief and to my parents-in-law's astonishment, in 12 years, we now have 700 people working with us in the UK, another 100 plus in America. We're launching in Russia this year. We were the National Business Awards, Small to Medium-Sized Business of the Year. A couple of years back, I have been twice Entrepreneur of the Year in the National Business Awards. And in the first couple of years, I said we were the multi-award-winning adventure business. We now actually are. So that's, I was just sort of slightly advancing on that one. So anyway, it's all been good. We turn over about 14.5 million. Our EBIT is about 2.5 million. So I like to feel that my experience with Time Reboot is from the actual, bolts and getting under the bonnet side of running a business. I've run a business from startup all the way through, and I know all those pains and growing pains, which I think I should be able to, I would like to get involved with investees and say, look, have you thought about this? Hey, can you talk to these guys? So although I'm a non-exec director, I want to be involved after the investment decisions have been made. So that's a little bit about my background. I'm not a non-exec director of anybody else because I'm not really interested. But this one is about putting something back, and it's about people who I'm naturally interested with. I have a natural connection with military people, as do the other key players on this board. And I think that's a two-way street. I think once you're in the army, you are in for life. And one of the trust things, which is, I probably want to come back to, but one of the trust things is that I didn't trust the people who were asking whether they invest in me. But if they had been ex-military, I could have checked them out and found out through my network, which is army-wide, and go, are they good people? Are they capable people? Can you trust them? Do they have integrity? And that, I think, goes a huge way, a huge distance for people on my side of the fence who are offered investment. And also, the best companies can get investment from whomever they chose. This week, I've spoken to 2 people already saying thanks, but no thanks, but by all means, get back in touch in another year. And I think that our connection into the military will actually help us when people think, well, I've got a good business going, people are offering money, which VCT or which private equity house am I going to take the money from? Who can give me more than money, and who do I trust is going to look out for me? So I think that that should give Time Reboot VCT a natural USP. Anyway, why do I think ex-military are good at running businesses? Well, in my experience, from the cohort I went to Sandhurst with, many who, 80% of them have left, they all surprised themselves that they have got really good jobs having left. As an example, one of my troop leaders in my regiment, in my squadron, he just sold, he privatized Royal Mail. That was him. He did have to go up in front of the all-party parliamentary select committee and say, well, did you sell it too cheap? But he got it away. And he worked for me. I can't take all the credit, but he's now very high up in UBS, and many other people have set up their own businesses and have done really well. And why is that? I think the military trains and trains and trains. You do a year at Sandhurst, and you are taught how to plan. You are taught to think, what is the worst case scenario? What happens if? So you have to do that. And we think that's second nature, but that isn't what I saw in GE. And in fact, when I got to GE, when things went wrong, it was brushed away as if it never happened because nobody wanted to take ownership or accountability for it. So you couldn't learn from your mistakes. It was defined out of the process. Whereas the military is about allowing people to make mistakes, not giving them a bollocking afterwards, allowing them to do it once but not twice and learn from that experience. Secondly, from a very early stage in the military, you are put into situations for which you have not been trained. You are told to lead. And lead isn't sort of, oh gosh, what do we all think, you know, whatever. It is about coming up with a plan, selling it to your team, making a decision, and moving on. And you cannot not cope. You have to cope. You have to find a way to get through, under, over, around, but keep moving forward. And I think those attitudes and skills are very similar to running a business. You have to find a way to keep forward. And it's over-dramatizing it, but I often think of competitors as the enemy. What are they thinking? How do we outthink them or move faster than them? And those skills are actually pretty similar. I think the other thing is that you have to bring a team with you in the Army. And most people from the outside think the Army's all about giving orders, telling people what to do, and they have to do it. Well, if you do that, you will have a very miserable time and people will not work for you. I gave 2 orders, both of which I think were personal failures in my 7 years after leaving university. The rest of the time, it is about trying to get people to do shitty jobs when they're knackered, exhausted, cold, wet, and hungry, and doing it with a grin and going, no problem. The military is about getting things done on time without complaining. And if you can take that with you and put it into business, then you can actually galvanize a team in a way that they will be unbeatable. I found it did work at Coca-Cola, and I have worked with good teams, great teams, but the team I have at GO APE, I think, is the best I've ever worked for. And they, you know, we never watch the clock. We don't look to see whether, we're not managing them. We're trying to inspire them to lead and become leaders themselves. So I do think that ex-military people have an edge. I think there's some statistics to show that in America, as investments, ex-military businesses tend to do better. So for that reason alone, Time REBOOT VCT is onto a good thing. But I think the relationship that we will have, and this trust-respect stuff means that it is about trust and respect, and it is about integrity. A good investment is a good relationship with that investment company, with the investee. You know, good business relationships I've found are about strong relationships equals strong business. Poor relationships or one-sided relationships equals poor business. You know, that's just the way it is. And if this is about long-term investments in good businesses, then I think that relationship can only lead to a higher than average chance of success.